Just be warned, this is going to have some story spoilers for A Realm Reborn, Shadowbringers, and some White Mage questline stuff. Use your own discretion. And we're good. Okay. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
I'm Ronnie, but I go by Minsue in game.
Hmm. Yeah. And how long you been playing the game for?
I originally started back in 1.0. I was actually an Elysian back then. Ended up coming back I ended up quitting 1.0 about a month before it shut down, and then I
Hmm.
came back at the very beginning of 2.0 and have been playing ever since.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely do not look like an Elzen now. Uh,
No, no, I changed a little bit.
a little bit, yeah. I think you got maybe a little bit wider. I think there's some hair in some different places as opposed to before. Uh,
That Elven character is still very much is still exists.
hmm.
He's kind of captured in time forever in Balmong, so he's kind of in there. But with 2.0 being a new kind of experience, I
Hmm.
appreciate that my character carried over, but I kind of wanted to, start over with it too. And I did start off as a Duskwite Elysian, and then the Fantasia got me. So
Okay. Okay. So is did you start in Gridania? Why tell me why we picked this area over here for your interview? Because this you said was going to be
so
your favorite area.
I loved Gridania, mostly, and part of it is because this is where I found out I could get the Behemoth mount, which was a huge moment for me. But I did start in Gridania, and I have a lot of fond memories of Gridania. When I was first picking my new class, I didn't want to pick the same thing that I'd done back in 1.0, which was a pugilist. And then I discovered that, well, conjurers are not only healers, which was kind of a new concept for me because I've never
Hmm.
played healers in anything, but they also got a mount quest to get a unicorn mount. And one, unicorns are super awesome, but two, I was like, that's really neat. I get a mount for my class that
Right.
that's nobody else gets. So I went through it and going through the missions with the Pagel and learning that white magic used to be this really destructive force and it's kind of forbidden, but you get to be chosen to be responsible enough to do it, but you're canonically, like, very few people besides Pagel are ever chosen now to be able to be a white mage, and the fact that it has that aesthetic and that connection as a conjurer initially, at least with nature, kind of just really sold me. um and honestly, this is probably probably the prettiest place within Gridania, in my opinion.
I think we're probably in agreement there. Gridania, as a fellow Gridania lover, as this was my hometown starting out, except I did Lancer. I can definitely
uh
say this is my favorite starting city. This is the only place I'll ever have an actual residence in. Lavender Beds is my own personal home, and I'm never going to move away from it, even if there's a bigger space available somewhere else. So I get that.
Yeah, yeah. I got my little apartment out there in the lavender beds as well. There's something nice about it. It's very naturey, especially if you live in the city like I do.
Yeah,
So you don't get necessarily out in the nature as much. I like the other city states, but it feels a little more quiet and peaceful here.
I can see that. I specifically chose to stay in Gridania because I actually live in the country and it reminds me of where I live, and I like that. I don't like the city life either. So the nice quiet nature of everything around you is really nice to sort of bask yourself in. Going back to the part you talked about with your conjure quests and stuff, I've done those quests. I know what you're talking about. The teaching the balance, basically, don't ask too much from nature or nature will punish you,
Yeah,
essentially. And to this day, still the only class that has their own mount as part of the part of the rewards for leveling the class.
I
So,
know. We're awesome. We get to flex that unicorn mount.
oh,
Um, but yeah, it was a super neat experience, and honestly, I've played several different games, but it
hmm.
was the first time that I really connected with a healer in any kind of game, and it was a really awesome experience. And it's still why, to this day, the first thing I always get up every expansion pack never fails. It's my white mage every single time.
What so you've been playing for a while. You obviously, from the way you've talked about everything, you've been doing this for a bit in this game. What do you think was your favorite expansion to play White Mage through?
Ooh. honestly, probably Shadowbringers.
Really?
Now, I know that's going to be kind of, kind of on
Unexpected.
a lot of people are like Heaven's Ward or,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And absolutely, I'm all here for the dragons and everything. But Shadowbringers really brought home the whole aspect of, and this wasn't just for white mages, it brought it home for everybody in general because we're the warrior light. But you keep being told as a white mage during the class, too much of this magic can be dangerous, too much
Mhm.
light is bad, and it really was the only time that, like, besides out of the concept of being a warrior of light, that it's expressed that something that is generally considered good and too much can be incredibly dangerous. And Shadowbringers really brought home that whole, like, yes, generally we associate, shadow and dark with bad and light with good, but too much of it is bad. And we even get to see this process of us being overcome by this power of light. And I can't help draw some type of connection between that and possibly the magics that the white mages, when they were using it back, all those years ago with the black mages. I can't during that mage war between the black mages and the white mages,
Right. The War
how
of the Magi
destructive it
thing.
was. Yeah, how
Yeah.
destructive it was, and if it wasn't a similar, or at least a somewhat similar kind of experience where that light and that thing that was supposed to be good was just taken to such an extreme, and it quite literally nearly kills us and turns us into a monster. And it's just this absolute moment of realization, and it kind of brings into the fact that we need that balance, that not everything is good and too much, and that we can also overdo it, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
um
Don't
so
tip the
that
scale too
connection,
far.
yeah, and that connection between the light and the dark, the Shadowbringers really pushed, really actually resonated me as a white mage, and just how destructive we could be. And I was like, this is really cool. I get it's more the warrior of light in its entirety, and the light ether, but white mages also use that same kind of ether. I mean, they, so at the same time, I couldn't help but draw a parallel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that does seem like a pretty connected response to that story. Honestly, it's
And
now.
it
Oh,
felt
good.
really nice to overcome
Hmm.
that, the light poison or whatever they were having,
Yeah.
by accepting that balance, and taking some of Emmett Selch's darkness, at the end there. So it's kind of a nice, coming of age, coming of age moment there.
Yeah, yeah, it all kind of came full circle and it showed just for the people that, and even for the people that didn't get to do the white mage quests and the conjurer quests and stuff like that, because there are people that have played this game and are never going to experience that because they don't
Yep.
level that. It teaches them that same balance that you kind of got taught early on in the Realm Reborn with those quests.
Yep. Exactly. And it almost builds a bridge between those people that have been told that through the story of White Mage. Hey, look, this is normally good, but if you overdo it, it could be really bad and really dangerous. And that's the first instance outside of the Pagel and the whole nature thing with Gridani and the Conjure storyline that they really bring it up, that yeah, the light is just as dangerous as the dark.
Now, to sort of flip the question into a different direction, mechanically, if we take the story and stuff out of it, because white mage and all jobs have changed a lot over the years
Mhm.
as far as how they work. Mechanical wise, like what was your favorite period to actually be playing white mage in? Like just dealing with like stance dances, from early on, or like current day, kind of the more homogenized version.
I preferred it. And don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with the way it is now.
Mhm.
However, I am a firm believer in class aesthetics. And I really liked when I had my cleric stance, and I believe, was it Stormblood that they took that away from us?
I
I
believe it
feel like it was
was,
Stormblood.
yeah.
I think it was Stormblood. Don't mark me on that. I could be wrong.
It was either
Um,
Stormblood or Shadowbringers. I didn't play them back in Stormblood, so
and I do know that we have a skill that allows us, to get off a little bit of damage while the buff's up, but it's still not quite the same. So I like
mhm.
the ability of that kind of the essence of swapping from, hey, I'm the healer, to temporarily I can do some damage, and I'm doing damage. But at the same time, I in I'm nowhere near being an expert. I do get the idea of why they made it a temporary buff versus
Right.
something you could just keep on constantly, because the fact that I myself was guilty of accidentally being, oh yeah, I'm in cleric stance. But it also led to some of the most comical moments that I've had in dungeons and stuff. Um, but they did give me rescue, which
Ah,
has
yes.
led to plenty of comical moments in exchange. So I'll call it probably even. But overall, I've not been terribly disappointed in the way they've done
Hmm.
White Mage. Um, for the most part, I do feel like they could give us and this also applies across the board for most classes. I do hope that they at least give us a couple of more spells or abilities that do also keep pushing that class aesthetic, or that even if we're filling the same role, DPS, healer, etc. I want them to keep pushing that aesthetic, and even if it's still feels the same kind of niche reasoning of the things being the same,
Hmm.
give it some type of flair or something to make it have a little bit of pizzazz to make it separate. Even abilities that don't necessarily use too often. For example, my rescue ability. I don't use it too terribly often in any legitimately friendly ways.
Right.
It has come up where I've used it in friendly ways, but generally, I'm either not using it or it would be a troll to do it.
I would say
Um,
that 75% of the ones I've seen have been trolls, yeah.
but it is nice to have it there, and it is kind of a nice little class aesthetic to be able to be like, hey, my party member's in danger. I can rip them out of that danger using my magic.
Hmm.
So I hope they do add more stuff like that and don't, get scared of, possibly people. Yeah, they'll probably abuse it. We know we know players they're gonna do that. But the benefit of that, I feel, still greatly outweighs any cons that you would end up in.
Okay. Okay. I can get that. Now, since you've been playing for so long, what do you think, as far as accomplishments in the game, what do you think your biggest accomplishment has been?
Oh man. My biggest accomplishment would probably be completing the Binding Coils of Bahamut while it was still current content.
That
Don't get
would
me
have been
wrong,
rough. No, that would have
I
been rough.
absolutely recommend it to, anybody to go back and do it, whether you sync it or you don't. But to this day, I think it is still the toughest fight I've had, not only in Final Fantasy, but in pretty much any MMO I've ever had. Um, it was incredibly tough, and I still remember dying. I can't even count how many times I died to the dang twisters. Um, but something about that, and I'm excited because Joshi P recently mentioned that he's hoping to bring a little bit more challenge back to the game.
Right.
And I'm super excited about that because I absolutely like being pushed
Yeah.
and having that challenge, because that accomplishment of overcoming, the original Titan when he was real dangerous. That overcoming that fight was really
Hmm.
awesome. So I'm really kind of excited about that. But I think that would probably be my top achievement still to this day.
Okay.
There's been a lot of awesome fights, but that's probably still the toughest one in my opinion.
I could see that I've done Coils of Bahamut to a certain level synced up. I've done all of it unsynced. The Twintania fight is still, I can confirm, it's still a rough one for newbies to handle these days. I actually took a group in maybe, I don't know, a year or so ago of brand new, fresh faced recruits. They had no idea what to experience, watched no videos ahead of time. They got to Twintania, and they did not succeed. Uh,
I was gonna say Twintania brings, you're like you'll be going along, you'll be like, yeah, there's a couple little rough
hmm.
spots here and there, but it's not too bad. And then Twintania is like, yeah, hold my beer.
Yeah, yeah, no. Twintania is still a rough challenge to this day, even with the higher eye level than what we had back then. Um, and to put in context for anybody that watches this, when you mentioned the Titan thing, I know that, like, because Titan, he would knock you off of the platform and you wouldn't respawn like you do now. And on top of
Mhm.
that, back then, the netcode was even somehow worse than than what we experience today sometimes.
Yep.
So you would be well outside of that line AOE, and you'd be fully out of it, and then he would still shove you off, and there was
Yep.
nothing you could do.
Yep.
So,
And it was game over.
yep.
And me being a healer, it was a really bad time because it'd be like, oh no, yeah, I'm clearly like 6 feet outside of the hitbox. No, I'm not. So you got very good at it after you beat your head into a wall enough. You got very good at being like, all right, I 6 feet looks like it's safe. No, I need
Mhm.
about 20 or 30 feet.
Yeah, you'd have to either do that or you'd have to just get it down by time. You're like, this is the time he's gonna throw out the line OE. I'm gonna move now.
I'm gonna
Like it's
move
not
all the
even
way
on the
over here.
marker yet. It's not even on the map. I'm just gonna be out. And
Yep.
then and as someone that early on, like I said, I played Dragoon as my first class. Elusive Jump was not my friend, and
Working on
I'm
that floor tanking, huh?
yeah. Well, it was a floor. It just wasn't the arena floor anymore. So I was very guilty of jumping off my very first go around with Titan. That was embarrassing, but I learned. Um,
I learned a not so meta way to deal with Titan when it happened.
hmm.
If you got right up underneath his butt when he did the thing, half the time it wouldn't register and you wouldn't get pushed off. So if
It's
I
little
knew I was
things.
gonna be in the line, there's no way I'm getting out it. I said, you know what? And I would just run and be like, I need a hug, Titan.
Yeah, it's the little tricks you had learned back in those days, and once you got in there, and did you do like the Titan EX back in the day, like when it was
I
first?
did.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So that was
Um,
still back before we had cross world duty finder, right?
yep,
Yeah.
it would have been.
So
Uh,
you got that group. You did not let go of that group.
No, people started, if one or two people start dropping, it became very disheartening real quick because
Yeah.
you knew it was going to be a second to try and convince, because everybody knew it was just a really rough fight.
Hmm.
Um, and so it was really tough. And once you got in there, it was really easy even for somebody that knew what they were doing to mess it up, or just happen to not have the timing right.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was a hard time, and sometimes hard for the right reasons, sometimes hard for not the right reasons. But it was an experience, and I mean, obviously, we both still remember all the stuff we went through then, so it made some memories. But
Oh yeah, and some of it would get frustrating, but
mm,
sometimes it would get so frustrating it'd be comical at
it
times.
would,
Like
yeah.
you couldn't help but laugh
You
about
you
it.
had to laugh at it because if you couldn't laugh at it, you would have quit the game by this point. Like you wouldn't have dealt with it.
Just just rage quit, yeah.
Right? Yeah, you wouldn't be playing this, 10 years later like you are now. But um, I mean, we're pretty much near the end of this. Just for the last couple of things here, is there anything that anybody that's getting to know you should know about you that you haven't already said?
Mm, I am incredibly bashful, and so if you notice, I might stutter occasionally, or I might
Mhm.
even kind of have to think a little bit hard. Um, so while I play a very bulky and kind of, aggressive rough guard, it's scary. I, in real life, am the gentleman who feels bad if he asks the waitress for another glass of water. But on that side note, I am always happy to help, whether it's doing something as simple as helping you figure out how to do a guild levy. Yes, I still remember what guild levies are. Doing dungeons, anything like that.
Hmm.
I promise I'm not, as mean as my character looks. And I'm always down to do something. But other than that,
As
I'm
someone else who is also afraid to tell a food service worker when the order is wrong, I definitely empathize with that situation.
I married a nice, strong lady because somebody
Yes.
has to tell them that my order's wrong, and I sure as heck am not going to do it.
Yes,
Um,
I have done the same.
so, so, so she adopted me, but yes, I'm a lot friendlier, and while I may not necessarily talk as much, once you do
Hmm.
get me talking, I don't shut up. But I'm always down for if you ever need a friendly white mage or something to murder something. I'm pretty good at killing stuff.
Okay.
In game
Well,
for the friendly
we'll
FBI
hope. If not,
agent.
this I don't want this to have to be submissible as court evidence in the future. So please. Um, Any other things like any socials or any sort of like streaming services or anything like that that you take part in or
Oh man, I wish I was that cool. I'm
wish you
not.
were a streamer?
I
Always have
no,
to
no,
check. Never know.
no. My only social is on here, but yeah, if people need runs or anything, feel free to personally DM me in Discord. I have my phone on me all the time. I work from home,
Oh
work on
yeah.
my PC. I'm a tech guy, so if somebody needs help or anything like that, I'm down. But yeah, this whole adventure is basically culminated in me loving Final Fantasy and then joining a game where other people are in it and trying to be a little more social and it's helped. I've slowly gotten to know people and I've started actually joining a free company now.
Yeah.
And it's taken a guy that can't hardly ask for his own meal at the restaurant to be able to actually start doing this interview and try and make friends. So
Not only doing the
anything,
interview, but you're our first interview. So,
yeah. So if nothing else, I gotta say take from the game, let it be fun, but also, I mean, it's you can actually learn stuff from it. You can have moments. I can't tell you how many times that I've seen something that's resonated with something that's happened in real life or, had feelings. So I can't state how much I love this game and it's awesome.
well, hey, I think that's a good spot for us to end it. I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to do the interview with us here, and this will help everybody get to know you a little bit more, and then we'll keep seeing you in game. Hopefully, you stick around for a while.